Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. I'm the Executive Director of Churches for Middle East Peace, and I've been giving these daily updates since October 7th. Today is Saturday, August 3rd. Today is day 302. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin ordered Navy cruisers and destroyers to the Middle East, along with an additional fighter jet squadron, to increase the readiness to deploy more land-based missile defenses, according to the Pentagon. The build of additional U.S. military forces towards Israel is in direct response to the potential threat of an Iranian attack. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin III said yesterday that these additional aircraft and missile shooting warships are in response to threats from Iran and its proxies in Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen, the potential of their attacking Israel, but also U.S. Forces in the region in coming days in response to the death of Ismail Haniyeh. The military is sending one additional squadron of Air Force F-22 fighter jets, an unspecified number of additional Navy cruisers and destroyers capable of intercepting ballistic missiles, and if needed, more land-based ballistic missile defense systems. Austin has said that the priority of the United States does remain de-escalation, but that the U.S. military also is increasing its readiness in order to be able to deploy additional missile defense, land-based ballistic missile defense. Iran has responded to the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh that happened in Tehran last Wednesday morning in the early morning hours. They made dozens of arrests, according to the New York Times, more than 24 people, including some of their own senior intelligence officers, military officials, and staff workers that were at a military-run guest house in Tehran. This is in response to what's been identified as a huge and humiliating security breach that enabled the assassination of Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh. This is according to Iranian sources familiar with the investigation. The fervor of the response to the killing of Haniyeh underscores what a devastating security failure this was for Iran's leadership, with the assassination occurring at such a heavily guarded compound in the country's capital, within hours of their having sworn in their country's new president. That's according to the New York Times. In Israel, there has been an anxious calm over the state. According to also the New York Times, it has described the situation as an uneasy calm today as the country has braced for the threat of an Iranian retaliation, not only for Haniyeh's death in Tehran, but also for the bombing in Beirut that killed top Hezbollah figures, with the fears escalating that Israel's long-running hostilities between Iran and allies could intensify into a wider regional war. We talked about this last week, that de facto, there have been escalations or hostilities throughout the broader Middle East, but there are fears of even further escalations. Israelis have been told to prepare their safe rooms, to be prepared if alerts or alarms go off. Paramedics have conducted emergency drills throughout Israel. Hospitals have been prepared to move patients underground. Palestinians have said that in response to the funeral of Haniyeh, the slain Hamas leader, that there has been anger, but in large part it's been subdued. So that's a bit of the climate in terms of what things have been like there. Meanwhile, Iranian Revolutionary Guards have said that the initial reports about Haniyeh's death being a bombing was incorrect. According to Iran, their Revolutionary Guards have reported that Haniyeh was actually killed with a short-range projectile with a warhead of about 7 kilometers, which is about 7 kilograms, which is about 15 pounds. So that directly contradicts the reports that he was killed by explosives that were detonated in the building where he was staying. Iran's reprisal for the attack, according to the Revolutionary Guards, they said, quote, will be severe and at the appropriate time, place, and manner, end quote. According to Israel's intelligence, the Mossad hired Iranian agents, planted the explosives in 3 different rooms at the guest house in Tehran. And the explosives were detonated remotely from abroad. Hamas announced today that they're starting consultations to select Hananiah's successor. Reuters reported that. They are currently still in control of the Gaza Strip, and they said they're initiating a broad consultation process to determine a new leader to follow in the footsteps of Ismail Hananiah. And then Greek authorities are on high alert because they received warnings from foreign security forces about a possible attack on an Israeli target in Greece, according to Greek news. In terms of escalations between Israel and Lebanon, the Israeli Defense Forces said that fighter jets attacked Hezbollah targets in South Lebanon overnight into Saturday. So into Saturday morning, the IDF confirmed that it killed a key Hezbollah operative in South Lebanon this morning, Ali Nazia Abed Ali, in a strike on a vehicle in South Lebanon. The UK embassy in Lebanon urged British nationals to leave now as the situation could deteriorate rapidly. The US embassy has encouraged citizens to book any ticket available, even if the flight's not departing immediately or if it does not follow your first chosen route. The Swedish embassy announced it's shutting down in Beirut, and it urged its citizens to leave Lebanon as well. Many flights have been suspended to and from Israel. As of Friday, American Airlines, United, Delta, Lufthansa, Swiss International, Austrian, Brussels, all canceled flights to the region. And a 17-year-old was killed in an Israeli airstrike in the village of Deir Seryan in South Lebanon. 6 other people were wounded in the last 24 hours. Sources in Syria reported that 1 person was killed in an airstrike on a vehicle on the Damascus-Beirut highway. Al Arabiya reported that 1 person was killed in a strike on a vehicle also in South Lebanon in Tyre today. These are all just like small microcosms of what's happening throughout the region. In terms of conversations around hostage ceasefire negotiations, the head of Mossad and Shin Bet security forces traveled to Egypt and returned to Israel today to continue negotiations for a hostage release deal. Sources familiar with the negotiations reported to Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper. Hamas did not blow up the talks and is still committed to them, but according to Israeli estimations, Hananiah's killing in Tehran and the expected response will still delay progress towards an agreement. Israeli defense chiefs believe Netanyahu is actually not interested in a hostage deal with Hamas, according to senior members of the Israeli negotiating team. The family member of Eitan Levy, he was murdered on October 7th. His body was taken into Gaza. They published a video in the last 24 hours that shows Palestinians in Gaza abusing his body. That was released today. Relatives of Israeli hostages protested outside of the defense ministry in Tel Aviv, saying that Netanyahu has chosen to drag us into escalations rather than focusing on closing a deal. So demonstrations have continued across Israel into Saturday night. Reuters reported that 15 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school that was sheltering displaced people in Gaza City. In the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. The IDF said that the school was being used as a command center for Hamas. 15 people were killed there, according to Reuters. The death toll in Gaza today is at least 39,550 Palestinians killed, and those wounded is at least 91,280. In terms of the West Bank, this is really, this used to be really unusual, and it's becoming more and more common. Israeli forces raided, the raids are becoming increasingly common, but the IDF struck the West Bank city of Tulkarm twice today, killing 5 people that they claimed were planning a terrorist attack. The Israeli forces raided the city after the first strike, where they exchanged fire with armed Palestinians. According to reports, 9 people were killed, Palestinians were killed, as a result of the IDF strikes in Tulkarm. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed the IDF statement that 5 people were killed in the first strike and 4 were killed in the second attack. And what's important to note is that according to the New York Times, the use of airstrikes, these were airstrikes in the West Bank, and that's what used to be terribly unusual and is becoming increasingly common. The New York Times said it was a rare tactic but it's now being much more frequently used by the Israeli forces in the West Bank. Jewish settlers set an agricultural land on fire in the West Bank in the village of Al-Mughayir, according to Haaretz, adding that Israeli forces tasked with fighting terrorism in the area were reassigned to handle the incident after a Palestinian man was wounded. Hamas has said that 3 members of their military wing and 6 other fighters were killed in the strikes around the town of Tulkarm. Hundreds participated in a march calling to stop the war in the Arab city of Al-Fam in northern Israel today. And some analysts have been saying that Prime Minister Netanyahu is feeling more and more emboldened to act in the Middle East, that his actions against Iran happened because of President Joe Biden's dropping out of the presidential race in November. That was according to a report in The Telegraph, a British newspaper, saying that Biden was seeking to restrain Netanyahu when he was still in the race and told him not to respond too harshly to Iranian attacks. And finally, today it was reported in Israeli news that Biden told Prime Minister Netanyahu to, quote, stop bullshitting me, end quote, during a phone call that they had on Thursday night. This was on Channel 12 News in Israel. The network came out saying that this outburst came after Netanyahu told Biden that Israel was moving forward with negotiations on the hostage ceasefire deal and that there was soon going to be a delegation resuming talks. At the end of the conversation, Biden reportedly said, "Do not take the president for granted." According to Channel 12, the comment was made in the context of the Israeli-U.S. cooperation and a possible descent into a broader regional war. There's a lot riding in the next few days. It feels like the Middle East, all of us, it feels like it's on the edge. We've talked about the edge of a volcano. So we're praying that it not escalate further. There are so many groups actively engaged, from diplomacy, mobilizing and advocacy, direct humanitarian assistance. Pray that efforts towards peace and de-escalation will win the day. Pray for our leaders that they might make wise decisions and that peace might prevail. Might God go before us. Amen.